you are able to see my screen. Before that, we'll be recording this session. So UK-HyRES is one of the national hubs in UK for hydrogen research. Our research main focus is on fundamental solutions, um, fundamental solutions in hydrogen and alternative liquid fuels. We spread over like 19 universities. We are funded by EPSRC. It's quite a big hub having 59 staff and students, 40 plus partnerships, and having a total funding of 27.1 million. We have 8 main research themes. Technical themes like production, storage, and distribution, end users, alternative liquid fuels. We are also covering the cross-cutting themes and topics like economics, environment, social, and safety. So as a hub, we are covering both the length and breadth of the hydrogen research. So if you are interested to know more about our research, please reach out to us. And we are having a very fantastic active ECR network in our hub. As per the definition, like if you are a PhD student or a postdoc or an early career academic staff in the initial 3 years of your career, you are very welcome to join us. So we have 3 membership categories. So if you are funded by the hub, you can be a member. But if your supervisor is funded through the hub, you can join as an associate member. But if you or your supervisor are not funded by the hub, still you have an opportunity to join the network as an affiliate member. So we have a lot of activities going on in our hub. So we have monthly network meetings where senior academics share their career journey. We have research presentations, annual ECR forum, industrial visits, like monthly webinars, and we do a lot of networking events. And we share the opportunities, different opportunities available like events. We have a mentorship scheme for the PhD students. So there are a lot of resources available in the hub, and I would say that it's a great platform for networking, to equip your skills, to connect with other researchers in hydrogen. And like we are having like 90 plus people as members of the UK-HyRES ECR network joining across the globe. So it is an international network. So if you are interested in joining our network, please send an application or sign up using the QR code given on the screen. As you know that this ECR webinar series like is happening like every month. So the next ECR webinar series on your impact, promoting yourself and your research. And we know that research and publications are quite important for us as researchers, but to increase our research impact and to climb the ladder in our academic career, it is quite important that we have more networking, more connections, we get more visibility. So it's quite an important topic, like to understand how we can do that. So Karen Brooks will be the resource person for that webinar. That is on 10th June next month. So if you are interested in this topic, please sign up using the QR code here. Also, please feel free to share this with your colleagues. Yeah, if you missed the sign up application form for the network, please use again. And if you would like to know more about our research, please check our website. Also, you can write to us. Thank you. Let's begin our session. I think we all agree that managing time is quite tricky. Personally, I struggle. I actually have only one extra responsibility other than my research. But this past year, it was really challenging for me to find time for both. and we have teaching responsibilities, other citizenship roles. And when it comes to PhD students, like they need to finish their research before the funding ends. We also have funding deadlines. And the thing is, we all have like just 24 hours. But how effectively and productively we can manage our time, I think is a skill like we need to learn very early in our careers. So over this next hour, we'll be hearing about it from Rachel. I'm very happy to introduce Rachel to you. Rachel Rothman is a professor of sustainable chemical engineering at the University of Sheffield. She is co-director of UK-HyRES, director of South Yorkshire Sustainability Centre, co-director of the Grantham Centre for Sustainable Futures, lead of the Life Cycle Assessment Regulatory Science and Innovation Network, and academic lead for sustainability at the University of Sheffield. So you can see that time management is very essential for balancing these roles and responsibilities. So that is why I read all these roles, because we need to understand that how busy she is. And Rachel shared her academic career journey with us in the ECR network meeting, in one of the ECR network meetings. So it really made me wonder like how she manages to find time and a balance between her family life and all these big roles that clearly demand a lot of time. So I asked Rachel to share her strategies with us so that we can learn to steward our time effectively. Rachel, we are very delighted to have you with us. So let's get started. We will have time for Q&A after Rachel's presentation. Also, you can type your questions in the Q&A box there. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Sibamal. Can you see my slides okay?
Yeah, I can see your slides.
Lovely. Right, let's get going then. Yeah, thank you for the introduction, and you've done part of what I was going to say at the beginning for me already. But I thought I'd share something with you all first, because I don't normally tell my family when I'm doing webinars and presentations, because it's not necessarily the most interesting thing for my children. But I did say to my family, oh yes, I'm going to be doing a presentation about time management. And my husband laughed. That was his response. And I also mentioned it to my brother, who also laughed, because for a long time, particularly when I was a teenager, there was an ongoing joke in my family that I was born prematurely. I was 22 days early when I was born. And the ongoing joke in my family till at least my mid-20s was that was the only time I'd been early in my life, and I'd been making up for it ever since. So there was a certain irony to them in me being asked to present about time management. And I think there's something quite pertinent there, in that what people see from the outside is not necessarily what other people might see from the inside. So from Sibamal's perspective, I have very good time management. From my husband's perspective, I take on far too much. And from my mum's perspective, I do too much, which often means I'm late when she's invited me around for dinner or something like that. So time management is a balance, and it's all about priorities. It's about planning, and hopefully some of the things we'll talk about going through this will help you all with your time management going forward. So, as Sibamal said, I am the co-director of UK-HyRES, and I also have a lot of other hats. There we go, there's a lot of hats. AI generated me a lovely picture of hats. They're not actually my hats. I'm not really a hat person. But I have a lot of hats from a research leadership perspective. So as well as co-leading UK-HyRES, I co-lead the Grantham Centre for Sustainable Futures in Sheffield, and I lead the South Yorkshire Sustainability Centre. I lead what's now called the UK LCA network, and I've got a lot of other research projects around plastics and manufacturing and clean maritime as well. So there's a lot of different pulls on my time, and a lot of different aspects that my brain is trying to concurrently whir about in its thinking around research. I also teach 2 modules within our school in Sheffield, one in life cycle thinking assessment, and one to our second years. It's their core chemical engineering design module. I'm the academic lead for sustainability. And as Sibamal said, I also have a lot going on outside of work. So I've got 2 boys who are, one's just finishing primary school and the other's 2 years behind. I help coach some orienteering. I do a lot of running. My kids are always going to different activities all over the place. I'm also a beaver leader, so I go to Beavers every week. This weekend we'll be taking them on camp. So there's a lot of things going on in my life, and time management is really critical to be able to do that. And when I started thinking about what I would tell you about and how I would present it, I came back to the thinking around system sustainability. So let's take a hydrogen detour briefly. And if you think about a sustainable system around hydrogen, this is an AI generated image, by the way. I did good time management and saved myself time drawing these myself by asking AI to do it for me, and was quite pleasantly surprised by how it turned my reasonably detailed description into quite a good picture. So there's a good example of some time management for you. This is for a hydrogen bus system. Now, what I do in my research is life cycle assessment and looking at the environmental impacts of different systems, including hydrogen systems. And if you want to do a life cycle assessment, you have to think about the whole system. You have to think about what goes in at the start from a materials perspective and energy perspective. You have to think about how you use the system. You have to think about what's made during use. You have to think about what happens when you get to the end of something and how you might have recycles to make your materials more efficient. And all of the kind of different curly arrows and lines in here are all things that are really important when you think about system sustainability. And I'm sure for all of you, you look at that and you're kind of thinking, yeah, that makes sense. When we talk about hydrogen, we need to think about how are we making it, how are we storing it, where are we moving it to, how can we be more efficient in our use? Is there a way we can be more circular? And actually, exactly the same applies when you think about yourself. So here is your system sustainability. This is another AI generated image because I fed it a load of things I wanted it to draw for me to see what would come out. So here is an example that you can also see lots of arrows and going round in a loop on, because time management is about your own system sustainability. So you have draws on your time, much like making hydrogen has environmental impacts. And that might be your work and your research that you're doing. It might be your hobbies or your family life or social time. It might be about having rest and rejuvenation. It might be about going on training courses to learn new things and doing that continuous professional development. It might be about going to conferences and networking and all of the things in this diagram. They're all really important and they're all part of our big plan of time management. And the question really is, how do we manage that so that we are sustainable in ourselves and we can keep going and we can keep enjoying it and we can keep contributing to the world whilst thinking about those loops we're going around. And some of the things I'll talk about now cover some of those aspects. So we've already said the modern research landscape is overproduction can easily be the default setting. So it's very easy to think the more I do, the better I will be. And like everything else, there's always a balance between quality and quantity. And you have to really balance, if I do more, will it actually be better? Will it achieve more? More in what sense? Is it more quality or is it more quantity? And I think there's a danger to fall into more quantity is best when actually ensuring what we do is at a higher quality might be a better place of the time. So there will always be more research to do and more presentations to write and more courses to attend and more training to go on. And, oh, we better get a bit of teaching practice in if we think we might want to stay in academia and maybe try writing a grant and winning a bit of funding. There's always going to be loads to do. And from an academic perspective, I learned a long time ago that it's very hard to be really productive paper writing and grant writing at the same time, because they're quite different thought processes. And actually, for me, I find it better to write, I'm going to focus on paper writing this month or these months, and then I'm going to focus on grant writing and not try and do everything simultaneously all the time, because it's not necessarily possible. And trying to do everything leads to resource depletion, which just makes you really tired and burnt out. And along with that, as well as that there's always a lot to do, there are real system shocks. So the jump from a PhD student to a postdoc, or from an undergrad to a PhD student and a PhD student to a postdoc and a postdoc to either a career in industry or an academic career, they're big jumps where there's more complexity comes in each time, and the amount of things you have to think about increases every time you make one of those jumps, and the amount of responsibility you have changes, and the amount of independence you have changes. And it's always worth, every time you get to one of those system shocks, taking a step back and reevaluating where are you at to from a time management perspective. And I thought I'd tell you a little story here that you might find interesting. So when I was a reasonably new lecturer, I'd probably been a lecturer 1.5 or 2 years. I had a meeting with our head of faculty of engineering at the time, and he used to have meetings on a yearly basis with the new lecturers just to check that we were on track and we were going well. And he didn't seem very happy with me. And he wasn't happy because I hadn't put my big first grant proposal in yet. And there were various other things that he thought I should have done that I hadn't done. But yeah, I felt like I was busy all the time. I'd been given quite a lot of teaching. I'd got some admin roles I was doing. I was doing all sorts of things in the department. But clearly the things I had been doing and making myself busy with were not necessarily the things that he wanted me to be doing as the head of faculty. And one of the things he said to me was, you need to do with your academic career what you did before in your sporting efforts. So for those that don't know, I, for many years, was in the Great Britain orienteering team, and I ran quite a few world champs. A picture there's from me in the last world champs I ran back in, a long time ago. 2012 was the last one I ran. And when he said this to me, you need to do in your academic career what you do in your sporting career, I didn't really understand what he meant to start with, because what I did in my sporting career was I'd go running 6 days a week, sometimes twice a day. I'd do 2 heavy weight sessions. I'd go away and do orienteering training in relevant forests. I'd traveled all around the world doing orienteering training. I knew how to do that. I'd been doing it for many years. And those didn't feel like things that were going to help me write a grant or be a good academic. So I left his office slightly baffled. And then, having thought about it a bit longer, I'm not sure he knew quite how to articulate what he wanted me to do either. But I think he had the right idea, actually, even though it took me months, if not years, to kind of be able to explain it myself. And last night, when I was looking for some images to add to this, I dug out these pictures. And the top one is my goals from back in 2000, which was the last year I ran a Junior World Championships. And you can see on there, I've got my performance goals in the middle, and I've got technical goals and psychological goals and physical goals. And I was really specific and detailed about, these are the things I want to achieve in the year 2000. And the picture in the bottom right is an example of a training plan over the whole year, training and racing plan. That one's from 2011, I think, or 2010. And I used to highlight before each year started, I knew exactly where I was going to be in every week of the year. I had planned out, I'm going on these training camps, I've got these competitions I'm doing, these are the races I'm doing. And I was still doing my, well, in the first one, I was an undergraduate chemical engineer whilst I was making those performance goals. So I was doing all my degree at the same time. And then the second one, I was a lecturer already. I was in my second year of being a lecturer when that second was there. So I was doing that too. But my whole kind of year layout was planned around, there is some conferences in there as well. So conferences and what was the training I was doing. And actually one of the hardest things I found when I stopped orienteering internationally was I didn't have a plan anymore. All of that planning of, well, here's a world champs you're going to try and do. And if you're going to run that world champs, you need to have done these selection races and these competitions and this training all the way up to it. You could map all of that out. And the point I didn't have that, I felt lost. And that was really interesting. And it made me realize that that was what Mike was talking about when he told me I needed to apply my sporting skills to my academic career. It was about sitting back and thinking, what am I trying to achieve? Making a plan for how to get there, quite a detailed plan, as you can see from those examples, and then working out all the bits that needed to happen. And once you have a really clear plan, it's much easier to manage your time in order to get there, because you can see, well, here's where I need to put time in to do this, this, and this. Here's where I need to do something else. And then you can fit the other bits that you want to do in around it. But if you don't have a goal and a plan of where you're trying to get to, it's much, much harder to then manage your time in an appropriate way. And I don't think many of us ever sit down from a research perspective and make a plan as detailed as the type of plans I used to make as an athlete. And even I don't do it from a research perspective. I make better plans now than I used to from a research perspective, but I certainly don't go into the level of detail that I used to do when I was training, competing so hard. So I think there's a learning there about the type of planning that's needed. So where do things sometimes go wrong? Well, the first thing is in the resource depletion model. Time is finite, sadly. People always say to me, oh, what do you want for your birthday? And I'm like, oh, I'd rather have an extra day in the week, please, because then I might be able to do everything that I'm trying to achieve. Sadly, it's not possible. time is finite. Energy is the variable we have to play with. So how do we use our energy within the finite time we have? And don't underestimate how draining cognitive load is. So planning things out, whether it's just what are you doing in your life, like what are you having for dinner, when are you buying the food, what activity are you trying to get to, how are you getting into the office that day, all of that takes a drain as well. So that kind of cognitive load is energy draining, and you have to think about that when you balance your energy. And balance is the key. The balance is the important thing. If you switch tasks too frequently, you lose energy. So how can you help yourself focus on one task that you're doing, get that task done, and then move on to the next one, and not be distracted when doing one of those tasks by, oh, there's also that thing I need to do, and that thing I need to do, and that thing I need to do. Because if you're permanently being distracted between them, it will take longer in total to do all the tasks that are needed. So this comes back to the making a plan. What should you be spending your energy on, and how do you prioritize your tasks? And I really believe that one of the most important things with time management is planning what's needed and then prioritizing those tasks. And at the point you've prioritized, time management becomes easy. When I was pregnant with my first son, I was talking to someone because I was really busy at work. I'd got a load of teaching on. I was trying to do something else. I was a bit tired because I was pregnant. And the person I was talking to said, well, what's the most important thing to you at the moment? And I was like, well, growing this baby and making sure that I give birth to a healthy baby. And they looked at me and they're like, well, why are you stressing about all of these other things in your life? If that's your priority, that's the thing to focus on. And I reflected on it afterwards, because when they said it to me, it was like, well, it was so obvious, but I'd never translated it like that in my own head. I'd just been thinking about, well, I need to do this and that and that and that, and all these things need doing. And okay, that was a very specific circumstance, but the same applies for everything. If you know what your priority is, then you can prioritize in the right way. You can get those things done. And you have to accept that some of the things that aren't your priority, they might not get done because there might not be enough time for them. And it's quite often the case that deep work blocks help give focus. So can you, for example, set aside 2 hours or 3 hours that's a deep focus on this? You're not going to do anything else. And then think about, well, what helps you focus? So for me, if I'm trying to have a deep focus block on work in an evening, for example, and in my office at work as well, I play music. Music helps me focus, but the music can't have any words. There can't be any vocals along with the music, because if there's vocals, I find it distracting. And I learned this about it being a good way for me to focus when I was an undergraduate studying for exams. And at the time, because this was pre-internet music, really, I used to have a CD of like jazz moods played on a saxophone, and I listened to that CD so many times when I was doing my revision and my dissertation, and the same when I was working on my PhD as well. And now I use Spotify, and I have some like calming piano music I play, and I listen to Mozart's flute concertos. I used to play the flute, so I really enjoy them. But that really helps me focus, to have that background music going on, and it helps me not be distracted. Now, that's not the same for everybody. Some people need a completely quiet environment if they want to focus. Some people like music with vocals when they're trying to focus. And I think a really important thing for everyone to know, if you don't know yourself already, is what helps you focus. Is it something to do with music? Is it to do with the space you're sitting in? Know what helps you focus, and when you need to focus, put yourself in that space. You have control over that. And coming back to the balance, have a think about the high energy tasks and the low energy tasks. So a low energy task is deleting junk emails out your inbox, for example, whereas a high energy task might be strategic planning, or in my case, often a high energy task is reading papers that researchers have written who are working with me, and I need to then be thinking strategically about, is the story in this paper correct? Is the narrative reading well as it goes through? It's easy for me to change commas and typos. That's a low energy task, but a high energy task is thinking at a more strategic level about how something goes together. And for me, doing high energy tasks after lunch is not a good thing to do. I always find I get an energy dip after lunch. That is a good time to do a low energy task. And when I've got a really good focus, that's the time to move back to a high energy task. So I think that comes down to kind of knowing your body and how you work, and how to then help yourself focus. And someone gave me a tip a long time ago, and I don't always manage to do it, but I do think it's right. If you read an email, you should deal with that email straight away. That's the tip. And the theory behind it is, if you read an email and think, oh, I'll deal with that later, then later when you go back to it, you have to read that email again. Now, you've already read it once, but you've probably forgotten exactly what it said. So in now dealing with it, you're reading it again. And that's taken twice as long from a reading perspective as it would have done had you just dealt with it the first time you read it. So I think in theory this works well, but it means that you have to be reading things at a time when you have the space to then deal with them. And if they're really big tasks, maybe you put them on a task to-do list for later. But if they're small things, read the email, deal with it, move it out of the way and move on. It's done, and that's the most efficient way to do it possible. And that's an example of a kind of low energy task that you can get out of the way. Okay, next one. Strategic growth and scope creep. Not all tasks are created equal. I really believe this. So there's something called the 80-20 rule. And what it means is that 20% of your activities will drive 80% of your career progression, i.e. a small amount of what you do will really make a big difference. So the question then is, how do you identify what those small things are that will then lead to making a big difference in the long run? And this is tied into how do you know what to say no to, and do you know what to say yes to? Because it's not good to say yes to everything. And those of you who know me well will know that I'm terrible at saying yes to lots of things. And I always have to remind myself that it's okay to say no, and that one person can't do everything, and that sometimes it's better to say no, both for yourself and for others as well. So how do you decide which roles or activities or things you say yes to and which ones you say no to? So one tip is any role you get, and I think Sibimol will probably agree with this, having had the ECR chair role, is if you get a new role, you build it, you develop it in the thing you think that you would like it to be. You know, you maybe change things up from how someone did it previously because you've got a new spin on things. You're a new person doing that role. So you build it up, then you do it, and then you hand it over, because that has achieved all the 3 steps you need from a career perspective. You've put your own mark on something, you've demonstrated that it works, and then you've handed it on to someone else so you don't have to keep doing it. I do think that 1 year is quite a hard task for Sibimol in her chair to do all 3 of those things. And typically from an academic perspective, and this doesn't work so much for early career researchers, but it'll be relevant as you go up your careers, a 3-year kind of rotation makes sense, in that if it's a small part of what you do, 1 year to build something, 1 year to consolidate it, 1 year to plan who's going to be taking over and hand it over and move on. And you at that point have everything you need on your CV from that role. You don't need to keep doing it from any longer because you've already done it. And so it's something to think about, is how you get what you need from a role or a thing you're doing, but how you don't end up spending more time than is necessary to get your personal gain from it. When I first became a lecturer, I got given a new role called the support teaching coordinator. It's not a role that exists anymore. It was about coordinating the graduate training assistants in our department. It hadn't existed before, so I spent a while working out what the role should do and how it should be done. It probably took me 3 or 4 months to do that. I spent a year doing it, and then I handed it on to someone else, and it was done. And it was a line on my CV, but it didn't need anything else. At the time, that was a kind of CV from an academic perspective. Not many other people would care about that role. How do you decide where to say yes and no to things? I think this can be really tricky. So some things to think about is, does it offer visibility? Is it a role that, or an activity or a thing that would put your name out there and make you visible? So if you do a good job about it, you'll be known for it. Does it align with your 5-year plan? I wrote this down, and it doesn't have to be a 5-year plan. It could be a 1-year or a 10-year plan. I wrote this down, and then I thought, I wonder how many of the people who I'll be talking to have a 5-year plan. And my guess would be not very many of you. But it's very hard to prioritize if you don't know where you're trying to get to. And I would encourage this for all of you from a time management perspective, is know where you're trying to go, or have some ideas of options of where you would like to be, because then it helps you prioritize, and you can ask yourself, will this role or this thing help me get to that place? And if the answer is no, why are you thinking about doing it? And you do have to be kind of blunt to yourself and almost imagine you're talking to a critical friend sometimes, or actually talk to a critical friend. So take advice from mentors, from line managers, from others who've done the role before, how has it helped them? Do people think it would help you if you were doing it? So I have another example here for you. Back when I was a lecturer and senior lecturer, I did all the Athena Swan applications. I led on those for my department. And for those that don't know, Athena Swan is a kind of scheme which is about equality, diversity and inclusion. And you have to write quite a big application for it. And I was the lead for ED&I in our school, which was fine. It wasn't that big a role. And I'd done the applications. I'd been down to do assessment panels in London for the scheme as a whole. It taught me quite a lot. I'd met some interesting people and I was thinking about stepping down from that. And our faculty had just set up a role for the Faculty Director for Women in Engineering. And that role actually was turning into not just women in engineering, but ED&I as a whole. And the head of the faculty contacted me. This is the same guy who'd told me I should think about my sporting things before. He contacted me and said he'd like me to apply for this role. And I looked at it and I thought, this is a 20% role. That's quite a lot of my time. And there were a few things going on in my head when he asked me this. One is, do I really want to be spending 20% of my time doing that when I'm trying to grow my research career? So do I have the time to do that? Would I be better placed using the time for something else? And the other thing going on in my head was, did I want to be a person who was known from an ED&I perspective? And would that put me in a box? Because was I one of very few females in engineering who was now being asked to do the ED&I role in engineering? And was there a slight irony in that? And therefore, would it actually be a bad thing from a career perspective rather than a good thing from a career perspective? And I kind of churned these ideas around in my head, wasn't really coming out. So I wrote an email to send to my line manager at the time, who was someone who'd been in academia for a long time, and I trusted his opinion on it, to basically say, does he think that Mike, the head of faculty, wants me to do this because he thinks it will be good for my career, or just because he needs someone to do a good job of it and he knows that I'll do a good job because I'm the kind of person that if I take on a role, I will do it properly and I will put the time and effort into it. And I think that's a good skill to have, by the way. Anyway, I made a slight mistake in that when I sent this email, I didn't send it to my line manager. I sent it to Mike, the head of faculty, by mistake, because clearly I was talking about him and I put the wrong person in the to box. It's probably one of the most embarrassing things I've done in my academic career. His secretary emailed me back almost straight, say, I don't think you meant to send this to Mike. I'll delete it from his inbox. I was like, oh, thank goodness. Unfortunately for me, Mike was at a conference and had actually read his email straight away and had seen it before his secretary deleted it. So after dying from embarrassment, I read his response to me. And he also said, I'm not sure you meant to send me this, but the answer is both. And it was quite interesting, his perspective on it, because he said, I do want you to do it because I think you'll do a good job of it. And this is an important role and I need someone to do it. But I also think it will be good for you and your career in that it will make you visible within the faculty and within the university. And it will kind of help people know who you are, which is good from a career progression perspective. Now, my learning from that is I should just have asked him in the first place rather than asking someone else what if they knew what he was thinking and why he was asking me to do it. So that's one tip there, is if you want to know what someone thinks, just ask them. But also asking them, the mentor and the line manager and the people involved, was a really useful thing, because I got an honest response from people who had a lot more experience than me about how that role may or may not help me. And I did do the role in the end. I applied for it, I was interviewed, I got given the role, and I did it for a few years. And they were right, it did help, because I got to know all of the different heads of school in engineering. I got lots of different, well, I wrote the strategy for the Faculty of Engineering for 5 years from an ED&I perspective. I got various different kind of policies put in place that I think really helped from an inclusivity perspective. So it was a good thing to do. And then I handed it on. So I did it was the thing I said in the first tip, the build it, do it, hand it over. And so both of those tip boxes applied there. I built it, I did the role, I handed it over. And if you're not sure whether it's a yes or no, ask a mentor or a colleague or the person who's involved, because people are always happy to give you their opinion. And I think that's a really useful thing to do. And I've put on the bottom of there, this applies to personal life as well. it's easy to make objective decisions, or easier to make objective decisions with work things. But for me, if I'm trying to work out, should I take my kids to this event? Should I get them to go with someone else? Should I run the beaver camp I'm doing at the weekend, for example? Is it something I should say yes or no to? You have to apply it to your whole of your life, not just to an aspect of it. I don't think you can optimize time management in just one part of your life, because all the different parts of your life will have flex between them. There may be some weeks where you have to spend more time working. There may be some weeks where you go on holiday and you do no work, and you have to flex between all the different bits and all the associated deadlines and roles and activities with them. So everything I'm saying applies to all the bits of life, even though I'm kind of focusing it on the academic side. The zero waste workflow. So this is also known as professional recycling. How can you maximize outputs from your time? So can you make one poster which you're going to take to two conferences this year, and then you don't have to make another poster for the second one you go to because you've been efficient? Can you reuse some of the slides that you've done? How do you lower the activation energy? So creating templates. So I've put 3 examples up on the screen. One is a letterhead. I get asked to write letters a lot. If I had every time to find the university logo, write the header, find my signature that I've saved on my computer, blah, 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 I've made a template and I just have to fill in where the X's are each time. The overhead in making that is significantly less than the time saved in every time I write a letter. The middle one is the slides I used to use for teaching. So there's a whole template there for that. And the right-hand one is the template I now have for all high-res presentations, which I'm very happy to share with anyone who needs it. It's just a blank template that I can roll out rather than having to find a presentation I've done before, delete the bits that I don't want, end up with loads of pictures hanging over. The file ends up massive. It's a real pain. So how can you lower activation energy? How can things like templates help you with that? I'm a big fan now of doing, if you're a PhD student, doing a thesis by publications, because you want to write papers. And if you're writing papers and a thesis, why not just write a thesis made up of papers with the requisite bits on the front and the end, rather than trying to write it once and then write it again. I didn't do mine like that. Nobody suggested to me at the time. I wish I had, because it would have saved me loads of time when I then had to turn my thesis into papers after having already completed it. Right, final bit on these different things before there's a bit of audience participation. So engineering resilience. A system running at 100% capacity is a system waiting to fail. I think that applies for everything. It applies for everything in engineering as a whole, but it applies to us as people. If we're always going at 100%, some tiny little thing that impacts the system, everything then falls to pieces because there isn't space in your capacity to account for it. And I'll give you an example. Last week, my second year students were doing an online test. We've recently moved to Blackboard Ultra from Blackboard. I'd copied some of the questions across from last year and edited them a bit, but they had pictures in them. And as it turned out, when the first students started doing the test, some of the pictures loaded up perfectly and some of them didn't load up at all, and they couldn't answer some of the questions, which is not good when it's a test that counts towards their final grade. Now, lucky for me, I had a bit of a gap in my calendar that day, and I was able to email them out to say, if you haven't started the test, don't do it. I fixed the problems. I had to upload all the pictures again. I then opened the test for all the ones who hadn't done it yet, and for the ones that had, I had to copy the questions for them to deal with it. That was something I wasn't expected to happen, that came in, that needed to be dealt with urgently. And had I not had any space in my diary, I wouldn't have been able to deal with it. So my diary, for anyone who's ever looked at it, it's horrific most of the time. It has meetings non-stop. And it was actually Tim Mays, the former director of UK-HyRES, who said to me probably 3 years ago, you need some white space in your calendar. And he was absolutely right. I did need some white space in my calendar. So you will quite often see, and you can, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but in this Wednesday that I've picked, you will see that there are 2 blocks that are just called white space. And they're there for me to catch up on all of the tasks that need doing and catching up on, so that people don't put non-stop meetings in my diary all day, every day, which is what happens otherwise. Now, that's less relevant when you're a PhD student and an early career academic, maybe, but I think it's good practice to start doing it now, so that when your diaries do start filling up, you still keep control of your space to make sure you have time to do the things that need doing. System maintenance is important. So what are your non-negotiable maintenance things? So do you need to go for a run, do some yoga, have time to do some knitting, go and play pool with your friends, whatever it might be. What are the things you need to do that help give you resilience in your life? Because those social, sporting, etc. activities, they make you a better researcher. When I was a undergraduate at Cambridge, I had a director of studies from a different college. And 2 weeks before my second year exams, he told me I was going to fail if I didn't stop running. And the reason he told me that was because I turned up to his director of studies meeting with him, and he only used to talk to us for 10 minutes. But I turned up in my running kit because I was going for a run directly afterwards. And exercise was so out of his sphere of understanding, he couldn't understand how I could possibly have time to go for a run for an hour when I should absolutely be revising something for the exams. Now, I was so incensed that he'd had the cheek to say this to me that it made me even more determined that I was going to pass my exams and run as much as humanly possible that week. And I did continue my training as planned, and I did pass all of my exams, and I got a first, and he had to eat his words somewhat at that point. That was in my second year. Now, what he'd failed to realise was that actually I would have done much worse revision had I not gone running. I needed that running as a time to clear my head, to get the fresh air, to then put me in the best position that when I started doing my revision again afterwards, I could really focus and concentrate and learn and take things in. And running isn't for everyone. Not all of you are going to be wanting to go for a run to clear your heads, but there will be something you do that clears your head. And I think it's really important to know yourself, know what's important for you, for your system maintenance of how to get the best out of you, because you won't be able to manage your time well if you've not had that kind of input that helps you kind of be the most efficient and the best you can be. And the final thing I wrote is own your own choices and be happy with them. And there's my little picture of a Zen Buddhist being happy with their choices. Everybody has different choices around work-life balance. Everybody's non-negotiables are different. It's up to you to decide what yours are, and you have to know what you want from that respect, and you have to be happy with it and make your choice. Be happy with the fact that you've made a choice, and if at future you think, oh, I'm not happy with it anymore, then change it. You can always change it. So know what balance you're looking for, know what balance you want, and then make sure you get that, and only you can decide that and put it in place. Okay, we're going to do a mini quiz. This is the Sustainable Career Audit. So there's 2 pages of it. You're going to have to count up to 12 at the most, I think. So thinking about your past week, I'm going to do it at the same time as you guys do. Thinking about your past week, how many of these sustainability standards did you meet? You can give yourselves a virtual tick, and you have to count your ticks up. So did you protect deep work? So did you, for example, successfully hold at least 2 3-hour blocks for your primary knowledge product? So it might be writing your thesis or writing a paper or doing some modeling or being in the lab, whatever it is. Give yourself a mental tick, count them if you did that one. Single tasking focus. Did you avoid mental friction and multitasking by closing emails, messaging apps, etc. during intense research periods? Give yourself a tick if you removed those distractions. And then admin batching. So this is about those high and low energy tasks. Did you consolidate routine tasks into a single low energy window? That's your first 3. Next 3. This is around your strategic investment. Intentional boundaries. So did you decline or delegate at least one request that did not align with your primary career development goals? It might be some other kind of plan, but some that didn't align with your plan. High impact prioritization. Did you dedicate your peak energy hours to the 20% of tasks that lead the highest professional return on investment? And visible contribution. So did you ensure your service work, things like committees and peer reviews, were impactful for your field and recognised by your mentors? That's your first ones. Keep the number that you've got to in your head of how many ticks you've got. Here come the next 5. Resource recovery. So output recycling. Did you repurpose at least one piece of work for a second use? And workflow automation. Did you use or create a template or a standard process for recurring tasks to further reduce startup time? So that's about our efficiency. And then finally, system resilience. Did you keep at least 15% of your weekly schedule unassigned to accommodate system spikes and emergencies? Did you practice a daily shutdown ritual to clear the cognitive load and allow a clean break between work and rest? And then finally, essential maintenance. Did you treat sleep, physical movement, social connection as non-negotiable infrastructure for your productivity? All right. You should have a number in your head that's between 1 and 11. And ironically, my slide now says 12, but there were definitely only 11 boxes you could have ticked. So nobody should have 12. Out of curiosity, and you're going to have to raise your hand for me to know this, I think, is raising a hand a thing people can do on this call or not, Sibamol? I don't know. Did anyone get to 11? Maybe you can give us like a thumbs up or something. Did anyone get to 11? Did anyone manage all of those things? Or you can send a reaction, I think, can't you? Looks like no. Did anyone get to 10? Still no. Then you'd be in optimal performance. Okay, did anyone get between 7 and 9? I got to 9, counting them up myself. Did anyone get between 7 and 9? Stable but strained. Oh, we've got a couple of people who got between 7 and 9. Well done, all of you. And did anyone get 6 or less? Not many people are voting at the minute. We've got a few in 6 or less. I've turned this into a PDF that I'll share with Ellie to send to everyone afterwards in case it's useful for you. But I do recommend checking in with yourself every so often, thinking about these things. Are you doing the things that are important that will make a difference? Let me go back over here. Okay, final slide. Your career is a marathon, not a sprint. And engineering it for sustainability is the only way, 1, to get through it, and 2, to win, to get to where you want to go. You've heard me say a few times about plans. Make a plan, or many plans. It might be more than one plan. There might be sub-plans within your plan. Know where you're trying to get to and make a plan. Once you've got a plan, you can prioritize the tasks that are in it. Prioritize them based on what's important, which isn't always the same as what's easy or enjoyable. I haven't really talked about this next one, but don't be scared of difficult tasks and conversations. It's really easy to think, oh, that task's a bit difficult. I'll do it tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. And well, tomorrow never comes. And so sometimes you just have to do the difficult thing. And quite often you find that when you do it, it's not as difficult as you thought it was. And the same applies with difficult conversations. Particularly with difficult conversations, I find that you're much better to have them and get them out of the way, because then you don't have to worry about it. If you know there's a difficult conversation coming up, there is a cognitive load that sits in the back of your brain causing you stress of, I'm worried because I have this difficult conversation coming up. Just have it, do it, and get it out the way, and then you don't need to worry about it anymore. Take the opportunities that arise. Certainly for me, a lot of the reason I've got to where I have so far is because I've taken opportunities as they've come up. That faculty director of women engineering is an example of one. When we first were putting HyRES together, there was a call that was out. Tim Mays contacted me to say, would I like to be a co-director with him? That was an opportunity I took up. It was a good choice. We've done loads with it, and it was really great working with Tim for so many years on putting HyRES together and building it. It's also okay to say no. You can't do everything. And if you're not sure, ask for advice. And almost the most important thing is enjoy the journey. If you're permanently stressed from a time management perspective, the journey will not be fun anymore. So make sure you enjoy the journey. And the final thing I was going to put up is this. This is a thing that my kids and my family have, so my husband and my kids, we set up when they were thinking about all sorts of things at school and at running races. And this is the mantra we have now in our house. So I thought I would share it with you. And that is that you should start, you should finish the thing that you start, you should work hard, and you should have fun doing it. And we don't kind of evaluate ourselves on how well the outcome, how good the outcome was. So did they win a race, for example? We evaluate ourselves on, did we achieve those 4 things? And if you achieve those 4 things, you should be happy with it. So did you start it, finish it, work hard, and did you have fun doing it? And if you achieve those 4 things, then you've done some good time management and you should be happy with where you're at. And that is everything from me on time management. And there is a small amount of time left to answer your questions.
Thanks, Rachel. I have no words. It's a wonderful presentation. I think we all have a lot to learn from you. And yeah, I'm sure it is going to help all of us in a long run. So you can ask your questions in the Q&A box. Also, you can raise your hand and you can ask Rachel directly. Yeah, we have few minutes to ask questions.
I can see there's one in the comment box. So Rajesh says, I generally try to do the things and tasks to the perfection, and that takes time and energy, but sometimes it drains the interest. What do you do here?
Oh, that's a good question. And there's a very fine line between perfectionism and competitiveness. Competitiveness is about doing the best you can within the constraints you have, and perfectionism is about it always trying to be perfect without constraints. And actually, competitive is better than perfect. And I definitely used to sit more in the perfectionism box, and it took me a long time to move myself into the competitive box. And that's particularly in a workspace, that is. And that's about understanding how good does a thing need to be, and be happy that it might not be the very best it could be, but it's good enough for what it needs to do. And I think as a good example around, I don't know, for example, if you're writing a paper, the first draft does not need to be perfect. And this is a trap I fell into writing my first grant. I thought that the first grant, I needed to make it perfect before I sent it around for feedback. Inevitably, you're going to get loads of feedback and you're going to change loads of things with any paper or grant application. So don't try and make it perfect to start with, because it won't be. There's no way it can be. Make it good enough to be sent round to get feedback on it. And that's something I try and keep in my head now, is what is good enough, and therefore what do you need to do to make it good enough, not to make it perfect.
Any more questions? I think I have a couple of questions.
Go on.
I think like when you take a role, like as you said, you always try to do your very best to fulfill those responsibilities. But the thing is, like, even if it is research or any other role, there are a lot of things we can do, like it never ends. Like you have a lot of ideas. So like, how do you limit yourself saying, okay, this is enough, this is good enough. Yeah, I can distribute my energy to other things. Like sometimes you feel like, oh, I could have done more, not to have that kind of a regret. Like, how can we manage?
Yeah, it's really tricky, and I think some of it comes with confidence and experience, and being able to feel happy with not doing more, I think is always difficult. And it's something I find teaching engineering students with design. There's always more design you can do, but it doesn't mean that it will make it any better or will get you any more marks if you do it. And I think when it comes to managing your own time in that respect, coming back to if I do more, will it help my career goals in the long run? Will it actually, although there might be more stuff done, does it actually move you any further forward than where you're at currently? Have you already done enough for what you need to achieve in order to get where you're trying to go? And pulling it back to the bigger picture rather than looking at the detail of the task, I think is the way to make that decision. Because if you only look at the details, well, yeah, I can do this next detail and this next detail. But when you sit back and look at the big picture, maybe one detail is enough and you don't need 10 of them.
Yeah, thanks, Resha. We have another question. Is there any way to make your non-negotiables more efficient?
I think it depends what your non-negotiables are, probably, and also how and why they're non-negotiable. So what is non-negotiable about them? I mean, I would love to have time to go for an hour and a half's run every day. I do not have time for that, nor do I currently have the energy for that. But if I get out for half an hour and I'm happy with that. So my non-negotiable is then different to what it used to be or will change over time. So I think there's something there about, even within a non-negotiable, there's probably some flex within it. So what within maybe it is that you go to, I don't know, a Pilates class, for example. Do you need to go to 5 a week, or is 3 a week enough? And how do you balance that against everything else? So efficiency is an interesting question, because efficient is often hard to define. And if it's efficient compared to the rest of your life, that's about the balance of the non-negotiables with the other things that are happening. And I think it depends on what they are and understanding what you actually need from them.
Yeah, there is another question. With a busy schedule and changing commitments, how do you manage lunch breaks? Do you treat them as a non-negotiable, or would you take lunch into a seminar if it runs over that time?
I definitely take lunch into seminars and meetings frequently. I'm absolutely rubbish if I don't eat. I'm like grumpy as anything. I can't focus. Food is a thing for me that's really important, and I need, like, my body just needs to eat on a reasonably regular thing. You will quite often see me if you have a meeting with me between 10 and 11:30. At some point, I will probably have eaten a banana during that time because I get to mid-morning and breakfast was a long time ago and I need some food. And I don't think you should ever feel bad about needing to eat food or lunch during a meeting. If people put a meeting that's at that time, then personally, I think you should feel fine to be able to eat. You might have noticed when I put the snippet of my diary up that my calendar actually now has lunch written in it for an hour each day between 12 and 1. I very, very rarely actually take a whole hour's lunch break because inevitably the thing happening before will carry on, or the thing I was doing at 9 o'clock will have had some actions and I just need to get them done at 12. But the reason I put it in my diary there is to remind me that I need to eat lunch, and that I will not be as effective and productive if I haven't. So it's not there to make sure I always take an hour every day, because there's no way I will. And that's my choice how I spend that time. You know, quite often I might spend half an hour of my hour finishing up some tasks, and then the other half hour I might eat or pop out inside and get some fresh air if it's a nice day, for example. So yes, I quite frequently eat lunch in meetings, and I personally believe that you shouldn't feel bad about doing that ever.
Yeah, Rachel, we have one more question. Is it fine? Are you fine to take that?
Yeah, no, I'm okay to keep going if everyone else is.
Okay. Sure. I'm an ECR with very free work calendar, but I still struggle with getting on with my research. Out with work, I feel that my life maintenance does, although symbol require a significant time slab. How do I start building my career from here?
Yeah, I think this is one of the challenges of being an ECR. And one of the reasons I'm able to get a lot done in my time is because I have a lot of things that are in my calendar that I have to do. So they're meetings with other people where I have to show up and do that thing because that's what's in my calendar. And I am much more, and a lot of people are much more efficient when there's a deadline to work to. So if I've got a meeting with someone about a thing, I have to do whatever was needed before the meeting. I have to turn up to the meeting. I find that easy to do because it's there and it's in my calendar. Whereas if I needed to do that thing, but there wasn't a meeting for it, inevitably it's easy for it to then slip and be done a different day or not get done, etc. And I think that is one of the hardest things. And personally, I make myself kind of pretend deadlines in a way. So I quite often now will block bits of time in my calendar that say I'm going to do this thing now, and that thing is then done and it's out the way. Because if I don't have that structure, I also find it very hard to then focus on getting the right things done. This talks a bit to the Olivia's question as well underneath, but they're kind of related, the two questions. So with lulls in research, I would switch and do a different bit of it. So if my experimental stuff wasn't working, I'd go and do a bit of writing for a while, because it gets really depressing. My PhD was predominantly experimental, and I did a lot of working with iodine, and I created an awful lot of iodine fireworks in a fume hood that weren't really supposed to be happening, but it's because the equipment kept breaking. And it's really depressing and frustrating. And sometimes you just have to stop doing that thing and go and do a different task and then come back to it once you've got the energy back again. And I think how you switch between tasks at the right frequency to keep your high energy and focus up, it's something to learn for yourself. So yeah, if there's a bit of a lull, go and do something else. Back on the kind of calendar, free work calendar. So yeah, I set myself my own deadlines of things to meet. And if setting it yourself doesn't work, then tell your supervisor or your line manager that you're going to send them something at a particular time on a particular day, because now they're expecting it off you, and now it becomes a hard deadline, not just one you have to meet to satisfy yourself. So that's one way to kind of put things in that then have to happen. And I think, yeah, life maintenance taking time is a tricky one, and there's a balance there to look at, well, how much time does it actually need to take, and how do you consolidate it so that it's maybe not every day or it's on some days, and how do you balance it? Because ultimately you still have to do the right amount of work in a week, and you have to work out for your body and your timescales, how do you best distribute those hours that you're going to do. And you might have noticed when I put the day of my calendar up, that particular day on a Wednesday, I pick my kids up from school at 4:30. That's when they finish. And quite often it means I'll finish at 20:15. I'll go and pick them up. I take them home. I give them dinner. We might play some games. I take them out to whatever evening activity they've got. And then I might do an hour or two of work in the evening. And that's my own choice, because I would rather get the time to spend the time with my kids between 4:30 and 8:00 and then do an hour of work from 8 till 9 than I would not get that time with my kids and then have the time later on. And that's a choice I've made in on my own balance, and everybody's balance and choices will be different. And that's what I meant about kind of owning your choices and being happy with them. So make a decision for yourself and then be happy with the decision you've made. And quite often you have flexibility with that in yourself. And if you don't have flexibility, talk to your line manager about it, because so long as you get the work done, in general, line managers are happy that you're balancing your own time appropriately to be able to do that.
Yeah. Thanks, Rachel. I have more questions, but I'll ask you later.
Okay.
But thank you for thank you for managing your time and sparing this for us. Like, it was really useful. Yeah, I have a few notes for myself. I scored really badly in your audit. Yeah, but we'll be sharing it with everyone. Yeah, sharing the presentation and also the audit that Rachel prepared for us. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Thank you all for joining today's webinar. Please sign up for the next one. We will see you at the next webinar. Thank you.